I don't know if it's asking you,
Uh,
but it looks like we're recording.
yeah, great.
Hi, Christina.
Hi, Brady. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah.
Oh, good. So I'm really glad that we got this figured out and that we're getting to talk, because I think that we can at least answer a few questions, or start to hash out some of the things and the concerns that people are thinking about most right now.
Right.
And
Right.
you're the best in the business, along with myself, I like to think. So
Yes, definitely.
so let's do you want to go ahead and put up your social media
Oh, yeah.
information, just in case people
Let's
want
see
to
if
know who
this,
you are?
can
And
you see that?
yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect.
And
Yeah,
then
Christina.
so that's my email and Facebook. And then hold on, one more thing. Uh, my website.
Christina
So
Craig, collegecounseling.com.
that's about
Perfect.
it. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
this is I don't know if this can be seen, but
Yeah, I
I'm
can
just Brady
see it.
Norval, and
I
it's
see it.
findabetteryou.com.
Yep, I see it. Great.
Okay, so let's just get. I mean,
Yeah.
there are so many things to discuss, and
Yes.
maybe we'll do another one of these, but I know we
Yeah.
have a time frame here, so I just want to get right into it.
Sure.
Do you think schools are opening in the fall?
That's a
And
really good.
what have you heard?
I've heard mixed things actually. I just saw one of the Cal States is going to go all online. I think I also saw that I need to verify it, but UC San Diego was talking about going to all online for the fall. I need to again verify that, but then I'm in Wisconsin, although it doesn't matter. But here in the Midwest, Purdue University in Indiana, they just put out a statement saying we will definitely be open in the fall, like in person. And there was
Which is
talk.
interesting, because Purdue has the best like online learning program probably in the world.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I saw something where they were floating the idea that all students would be tested for coronavirus, something like that. So I'm seeing different things. So I guess we're still, too early, right, to tell
Yeah.
about it. And as with I think anything that's been happening the last couple of weeks, there's no universal protocol. Every place is kind of making decisions on their own. So it's a little
Yeah.
maddening. Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is interesting, because we're recording this on the 22nd of April. Happy Earth Day,
Yeah,
by the
you
way.
too.
And I think that it's so uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody wants to give out some information, which is very, I guess it's helpful and typical. I know that yesterday I had a student write me because Babson had sent out an email saying that, which is sort of this general idea that they're preparing for whatever might
Right.
be in the fall, which could be a mix of virtual and in-person learning. It could be all virtual. And I think that's the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that most of the schools are just trying to be as prepared as possible so they don't get caught so off guard like they were this semester. Because I think,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember, I think most of these schools haven't shut down. Most of them didn't even shut down on, you were in New York on September 11th, but
Yeah, right.
Columbia didn't shut
Exactly.
down. Did you?
No. That's a good. I think
But
we
didn't
had
send anyone home.
no. Nobody was sent. No, actually, on the contrary, they said you need to stay because people didn't know what was happening, and they kind of like locked down the city in a different way than what we're dealing with right now. But no, after 9/11, I think they canceled classes for maybe 2 days,
Yeah.
maybe 2 to 3 days. Nothing like this. Like, and obviously those are two different things. One's a pandemic and one's a terrorist attack. But I mean, now, do I think if that happened now, that's interesting. I think maybe things would have shut down and everything would have gone online. Actually,
Yeah.
that's
I
that's a
think
whole different conversation. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the first time. I think it's the first time that schools have shut down pretty much since World War II. So
Yeah.
I think that they're excited that they're creating the technology, and I think for some
Right.
schools it's such an investment. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably such a huge investment of time and resource to get the virtual learning system going. I mean, I know that we're friends with some professors from my alma mater, and I know that it's it's driving faculty insane.
Yeah, I mean, having, I worked at Marquette, and when I got my master's there, I still know people who are professors there, and yes, it's definitely, some people I think kind of like it, but I think a lot of people are not excited about it, because I mean, I think when you get into teaching, your whole idea is you want to engage with students in person, and you want to be having that energy in the classroom, and now everything is separated by a screen, and I think, yes, so it's a major transition for everybody.
Which is an interesting segue, because I'd like to talk about sort of that small classroom idea, and talk about the UCs, because the UCs have announced that they're not going to require the SAT, ACT for this upcoming cycle, this admission cycle. So current juniors, and I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I know that you probably do too. But what do you think will be the result of them opening up the sort of test flexibility here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that people will assume it means it's going to be easier to get in, and I don't think that's true at all. And I think, I always tell everybody the number one thing that an admissions officer is looking at when they're reviewing your application is what classes have you taken and what grades did you get in those classes. So did you challenge yourself academically, and how did you then do in those classes? That's before test scores regardless. So even if when they do require test scores, a school is first looking at your transcript. So that means that, okay, I think it benefits kids who are very strong, who are still strong students, but they're not good at taking a test, a couple Saturdays of their life, and sitting in a room with 200 people filling in circles. Like, that makes sense, to me, having done admissions. Like, we always understood that. So I think the knee-jerk reaction, maybe some kids will be, oh, it's going to be easier. No, it's not going to be easier. They're still going to receive, what do the UCs receive? Like 150,000 applications every year. It's like,
at least that's that's like UCLA alone.
Yeah. And so what I would say is they're going to look even more at the transcript. I think those personal insight questions, I wouldn't be surprised if they add one or two, because they need to get to know who you are. The other thing would be, I guess, if I was working at the top of the UC, admissions hierarchy, I would probably want to see letters of recommendation. And I don't know if they're going to ask for that, but I mean, that would, to me, make sense.
That's putting a huge onus. That's putting a huge burden on California high school teachers.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. That's true.
So it's just one of those things where it seems like you're taking one of the elements out of the admission process, and I'm not like a huge fan of the tests. I hate the tests.
Yeah, me too.
But I understand that for some students who do really well on tests, it is an element that they rely on, and that they're that they have a big stake in for this process.
Sure.
And the UCs already. I mean, the UCs are all about access, right? So I think that the public universities in general are about access and affordability. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of students, are most of your students in the Midwest region right now?
At this point, I have people kind of all over. Yeah, I guess like the people I meet with in person are in Wisconsin, but I do have people all over the place. And even though the people I have in the Midwest, I still have people who apply to the UCs from here all the time, because California is an idea in people's minds that they want to, that there's the whole California like mystique, and I get it, but so yeah, you're right. They are about access, and so I don't think that they'll do letters of rec. I guess I'm saying that, having done admissions, that would be something helpful. But I also know that the UCs, they do hire admissions application readers just for that season, like temporary people, like people who come in and they work just for those couple months to read applications. Do you know what
No.
I'm saying? Like they have
Yeah, of
admissions
course.
officers, but then they also hire readers on top of that because it's so much work. So I
Yeah.
guess overall, I think they're going to be looking at your classes and your grades. They will understand that this time period in our history is unusual, and high schools have had to adapt so quickly. So it's sort of like an asterisk
Yeah.
on the transcript.
I think what's interesting is though for all public universities, right, is if people are being hit economically,
Yeah.
and they would have normally been somebody who would have applied to, for example, in your, in Wisconsin, if they would have been somebody who would have been able to apply to Marquette and pay mostly full tuition, or, they would have been able to apply to a USC or an LMU or a University of San Diego in California and pay full tuition.
Right.
And their family's been hit academically, and they were really good students, like really strong students. Now they're likely staking a huge chunk of their hope on the UC schools, because the UC schools, while they're still expensive public universities, they are relatively affordable on sort of the scheme of the universities across the spectrum that they compete with.
Right.
And so I think those students, especially the ones from California, from the in-state, from the in-state high schools of the system that we're talking about, but here we're talking about California. But I think those students are going to take up a lot of spots that were previously, that other students might have previously been more competitive for, because you are going to have so going back to your point where it's going to be a little bit more difficult, it's going to be a little bit more competitive for students generally now for the UCs.
Yeah.
Not only are we going to see a higher number of applicants because people are going to think there are no tests. This is easier for me. I have a better shot because I'm a great writer and I can write these great essays.
Right.
But it's actually, I think, really the reverse. I think that there are going to be many more competitive students applying from in-state.
Right.
And those are the spots that the schools are really focused on giving out. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that there is like a in-state mandate for how many students, like the percentage of students that have to be on campus, to receive state funding for the public universities.
No, yeah, right. People don't, and that's every state, really. I mean, like here in Wisconsin with UW-Madison and all the UW schools. I mean, I think it's the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised if more kids in this state decide to just go to to go to one of the UW campuses, because they know, yes, it's less expensive. And if a parent has been hit hard economically, right, that's a better option. Although I think on the other side of that, colleges are very concerned with getting enough students coming to their schools in order to keep the doors open. So perhaps there could be more scholarships available, because they have to make it attractive to students to want to come to their school. I think of, like a school like Marquette, or any of, I'm just really familiar with Jesuit schools, with a lot of the Jesuit schools, I mean, they're all competing with each other. And now you add in this whole other element. And so how do you make yourself attractive to these students even more when you know that things are absolutely crazy right now? So I don't know. I mean, that's something on an institutional level that they'll have to decide, how are you using scholarship money? But So
let's talk about the testing just really quickly. What do you foresee happening in the fall, or do you have any ideas sort of what students are worried about right now for the juniors and the sophomores and the freshmen? Also, what do you see happening in the fall with the testing?
A lot of juniors are really worried right now because so I don't know how it works in California, but in Wisconsin, everyone takes the ACT. Essentially, all the students take the ACT in March in school. It's like an in-school test. So a lot of people just got their scores back. Some of them were happy with their scores. Others were not happy with the scores and had planned, okay, I'm going to take it again in April. Well, then April got moved to June. And now June, if you go on the ACT website, it still says it's happening, I don't know though if that's really going to happen
Yeah.
because the SAT canceled for June. So I think people are really worried. Okay, what if I want to apply somewhere for early action or early decision, which a lot of people do? How will I have enough time to take the test again? Like
Yeah.
once or even twice. And I'm trying to reassure people that yes, you do have time. I mean, now they're saying there's going to be the August date, the September date, the October date, which is still enough time to take it and submit it for early action or early decision. But yes, I think people are just worried about being able to take the test enough times. And then kids who didn't do as well and I just know aren't good test takers, I'm just reassuring them and saying, now all these, there's so many schools that are test optional now. So let's like maybe even forget about the test. Let's look at test optional schools and then they can see who you really are as a student with your grades and classes. So yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, so I've read and I've sort of heard that that College Board and ACT are actually considering something like a test every weekend in August, September, and October.
That's crazy.
Just because they know, I mean,
Yeah.
they know that many people like you might not be free
Right.
3 weekends of August, but they want to make sure that you can take it on the one weekend when you are free.
Sure.
So it's not like they're expecting students, excuse me, to take 12 tests or something before the November
and
deadline.
You should never do that and never take 12 tests.
No, but let's okay. So this is good. So let's go. Let's talk about like what you're having students do right now, because I think that typically, like in normal circumstances, most of our juniors and even usually I'm telling sophomores at this time of the year to take the test, to just get it over with, right? Sure. I'm telling them to just be done with it. So what are you having your students do now, or what are you encouraging them to do, or how are you like supporting your students now with this like free time or whatever the situation might be for them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think of ways for them to stay proactive and to not, even the most driven students are admitting to me, well, I get all my work done by Tuesday and I have nothing to do the rest of the week. So I'm just thinking of, okay, if you have certain aspirations for certain kinds of schools, and this is not for every school, I'm talking about highly selective schools, you know, Columbia, Stanford, Notre Dame, whatever. I know that those schools will be looking at applicants during this time, after this, the juniors I'm talking about, but this applies to sophomores too and freshmen.
Sure.
They're going to be asking themselves, what did you do during this time period to take the initiative to give back to your community, to enhance your love of learning and to stay involved in your activities, to keep making an impact on your school. So a couple things in terms of love of learning, there are so many online college courses that you can take for free right now. So kids who are saying to me, oh, maybe I want to go into political science. Well, I found a whole list of like free online college courses that are offered at Ivy League schools. And it doesn't have to be Ivy League. I'm just saying that's what I found. And you could take a political science course. It doesn't matter if you get a like credit for it. That's not what it's about. It's like take the class, expose yourself to it, and see if you're interested in that subject. And I mean, it applies for all kinds of things. Business, one of my students did do a business class. It was a beginner business class through Penn Wharton School. It took her like 3 days kind of, but it was just, it was good to expose herself to that. So that's one thing. Other things are, because like I said at the beginning, what classes did you take and what grades did you receive? If there are classes the students have been having difficulties in leading up to this, I'm like, this is the time you stay in touch with that teacher. You keep on it. And do you need extra help in the class? There's also so many resources online too. Like Varsity Tutors is a company that I saw they're doing something called the virtual school day. And you can like log into a high school English study hall, you know, and share your papers with a kind of accomplished tutor that will help you again virtually. So it's thinking of ways, and I think that applies not just if you're wanting to apply to highly selective schools. It's like anybody should be doing that. If you're having difficulty in math leading up to this, well, don't just let that fall off the table.
Yeah,
yeah. Eventually you're going to go back to school. And if you just use this time to do nothing, you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
So.
You and I have talked about this before. I think it's really interesting because I think that, while we deal with very similar types of students, I think, one of the things that I always worry about with students is this idea of like, moving as progress. And sometimes people, it's like the hamster wheel,
Sure.
So you have a lot of great resources, and it sounds like there are, I know that there are an abundance of resources right now.
Sure.
But I don't, like it's like you said, I want to be really careful that these are the students who are shooting for the most competitive schools, the most ambitious students. But for a lot of other students, like what you and I have, like what we've discussed before, I just want them to watch documentaries.
Yeah.
I want them to read books. A lot of these kids haven't read a book, like for pleasure since high school began.
Yeah, that's true.
They don't even know what it means, and so I do feel like there is this huge middle group of students, sort of like your middle 50%, that they've been doing a lot of the work for so long, but they don't really enjoy it, and they don't really know what learning means. And so I'm telling a lot of my students to just like try to get back into it, try to start to enjoy the things that you're interested in. Use this as a time to explore. Like you said, if you're interested in business, I tell a lot of kids who think that they might have an interest in like engineering, because engineering is that one field when you're applying that you really need to have an idea if you're interested in it, because you'd hate to apply to a school that doesn't have engineering, or you'd hate to apply to a school thinking, like Marquette, thinking, well, I'll apply as a business major, but when I get there, I'll switch in, and then it ends up being a little bit more difficult to switch into engineering than you expected because you hadn't taken physics or you hadn't taken calculus. So I tell the students, like, if you have an interest in engineering, for example, this might be a really good time to explore that with some of the resources that you've mentioned.
Yeah, and I don't want it to sound like I only work with kids who are applying to those highly selective schools. I also have a lot of kids who are in that middle range. And I was just talking to one the other day, and he's like, yeah, I'm just kind of, he loves art. He wants to be an artist, maybe not apply to a visual arts program, but he just likes drawing. I said, so what have you been doing other than school? He's like, I'm drawing a lot. I said, that's great. Keep drawing. Like, just draw, that's awesome. Or kids that I'm working with who, like, usually right now they'd be doing track, running for track. And then I'm just like, go outside and run. Just go run. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just we'll have a meeting. I'm like, I know you can't have the track season right now, but I hope you go for a run today. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to, so that's, I don't want it to sound like I'm pushing people to like a certain point or something.
Totally.
But like, I just,
point taken.
If somebody tells me what their goals are, I'm going to try to give you resources for the goal. Like if you're just kind of like, I'm fine. Like, I'm not shooting for schools like that. That's fine. So I guess my biggest worry is just about the academics, because if you just sit around and play video games all day right now, which I know some kids I talk to that it's a little bit of what they're doing. I'm just like, you are going to have to go back to school again. Yeah. And it would not be a good idea if you just totally took a back seat, because that's going to be a rough transition. Yeah.
This is not black hole time. This is actual time that will appear in your life. Someone like this will, this time will follow you. This is part of your story, Yes,
absolutely. So it's definitely a balance of, yes, I don't want kids to feel more stressed, because I also realize people are feeling really anxious. They're feeling depressed. They're feeling everything just got abruptly changed in your life. If you were I mean, kids I'm talking to, one girl, I was looking forward to the Model UN state conference, and it got canceled, and I wrote this great paper and no one's going to see it. I'm like, I know, I'm so sorry. You know, all I can say is I'm sorry that I don't know what else, you know, what we can do.
She should read it and put it on YouTube.
Well, I know, I mean, yeah. And then other people have been saying this has happened all in the last month, how things have adapted, where like the first week or two, people were like, well, everything just got canceled and it's over with, and I'm just going to sit in my room. And now yesterday someone said, oh yeah, I made it to the state forensics competition and it's all online. Or like, my Taekwondo club, we're doing Zoom Taekwondo practice. I'm like, that's great, you know. So people are adapting now, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
I know.
Okay, so I don't mean to pivot so hard, but let's talk about seniors this year.
Sure.
And because we have like 10 days or so, 9 days until the May 1st deposit deadline. So what are you saying to your students who were planning on using April as a time to visit campuses, explore their options a little bit more? Are you basically telling them which school fits them the best? Or are you trying to, what are you trying to do to help them understand the different atmospheres and campuses?
I mean, it really, you know, it depends on the client. Some people already knew. I have a lot of people like who applied early and they already know exactly where they're going. They've known for a long time. I have had a couple of meetings with people on FaceTime where they really are having a hard time. And I guess what I'm telling them is you have to take advantage of all these virtual resources that schools are rolling out now. You have to weigh your pros and cons, and you kind of have to get back to the basics. Like there's a student who I know she would not be happy in like a small town or just an area that doesn't have a lot other than the college. Yeah. So that was one thing we talked about the other day, what her final choices were. And I just said, you have to ask yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, where will you be happy for 4 years? And if you know being in a little town is not going to be enough for you, then we need to eliminate that school right off the bat. You know, so I never say I can make that decision for them because, you know, they have to come to it on their own. But there's no like bad decisions really. Like you're still going to go to college, and
they're all great schools.
Exactly. And if you decide after, you know, during the first year you didn't like it, well, there's so many people transfer now. It's not ideal, but they do. And I mean, that's not you know, nobody really wants to do that, but it's not, you could transfer.
Yeah. Nothing is being signed in blood.
No.
And so many of these environments are about the people that you meet on campus, right? Like you end up having 5 to 10 good friends.
Exactly.
And those, you can find 5 to 10 good, thoughtful, kind people at any school.
Right.
And it ends up being your group, you know, you just sort of adapt to the environment and do what people do there. And I think it ends up being a really positive experience, whether you grew more than you expected by challenges that you encountered, or whether it was really comfortable for you.
Yeah. I guess I also would say that's what, I mean, I think sometimes throughout the process of researching colleges, of course, I always want people to look deep into the school. Like if you say you want to do journalism, okay, what do they offer? Does that school offer if you're studying journalism? What kind of research opportunities, internships, what are the actual classes you would take? But you still have to be happy, I think, where you are physically. Like it's such a basic thing that, like, that's why I'm saying to go back to, are you going to be happy in that location? I guess that's my philosophy is like, and that's also where that ideally the gut feeling where you step on the campus and you say, I know I have to be here. But unfortunately, kids can't do that. If you haven't visited, now you can't go and have that experience.
So I have my students, I'm telling my students, you know, the funny thing is like that cloud of uncertainty for the fall, whether it's even opening, because I feel like that's really the thing that a lot of my students are focused on, right? Like, well, is it even going to be a university in the fall?
I know.
But it's really difficult, I think. I think it's different when you have like a Colorado Boulder versus a University of Miami. Like those two options are, have some real contrast to them.
Definitely.
But for students who are looking at like a Virginia Tech versus a Purdue,
yeah, right.
it becomes so difficult. And I think that's where it's really important for people to have someone like you, or hopefully someone like me, who can be a sounding board and sort of talk some of this stuff out. Because at the end of the day, there is going to be a big difference between like a, sort of, I don't want to say like a Virginia culture or an Indiana culture, but there is a little bit of a difference between the South and the Midwest and the type of people. There's a big difference in the weather, sort of what's going to, like what 5 of your months are going to look like on campus. So I'm telling a lot of the kids, talk to people like Christina, talk to people, talk to me more, talk to your school counselor, talk to teachers, and just have them give you feedback about the type of place they picture you. And you don't have to take it all with a grain of salt, but if Christina pictures you in this particular environment and all of your teachers picture you in that same type of environment, but you hadn't thought about that, maybe that's something for you to start really thinking about.
That's a good point. I mean, of course, we also have to go back to our own personal experiences. I mean, for me, I knew. So when I wanted a city, I loved New York City, and I loved that the fact that Columbia is a campus in a city. And so that was when I felt that gut feeling on that campus. Like I remember that distinctly. I always share that with students. Like, and if I'm meeting with, if one of my clients, I can just tell that you need to be in a city, that's then you're not going to be happy in this other place. Or these kids who say, I love the Big Ten, big school environment. Okay, that's great. You're not going to be happy at a smaller school in a city. So then do you know what I'm saying? So yes, part of my personal experience, I'm going to share with them too.
And I think that, like, for some people, there are lots of parents who might say, well, I don't want my kid to go to a school based on the Big Ten. But you know what? In some ways, it's as good of a reason as any. I mean, we have to narrow down the options. There are so many great universities. We have to narrow down the options somehow. I mean, a kid knowing that they want to go to a Big Ten school is really just as good as a kid who knows that they want to go to a Northeast school in an urban environment.
Right. And that's another thing about like class size, because I talk to people about, would you be okay being in a really big class? You probably won't really talk to the professor. You're going to be more self-directed. Is that going to be okay with you? And if somebody says, yeah, I'm fine with that. And that's sort of what this online, what I've heard a lot of kids telling me is it's very self-directed, extremely self-directed. The teacher's kind of like, here's your assignment, contact me if you need it. But I'm like, they're on their own. And so some people are totally fine with that. And that tells me you'd be fine at a big school with a huge lecture hall. But I do have other kids who said, this is really hard. I don't like this. Nobody's like helping me. I feel lost. Okay, then you're going to probably need to be at a smaller school where you're in a small classroom around a table and you can have those discussions, So I think this is informative for people too.
Sure. So let's really quickly. I know that we're running out of time, but can you just talk a little bit about what you're telling your juniors and your sophomores about this, about how to frame this, or if they want to talk about this at all in their applications, and where they should do that, and sort of what would be the best way for them to express some of their frustrations about the pandemic, or their frustrations with the way school has gone in these last weeks in the application process.
So I would say the additional information section on the Common App is a great place to just give a little description. Here's what our school did. Here's how it worked. And I think that's fair. And I also would hope the counselors at all these schools are going to include something about it. Here's what we did. Here's how we approached this.
Sure.
I can foresee that the cliche essay for this coming year is going to be the coronavirus essay. And here's how I overcame this time period. Do not write that essay. Do not write that essay unless, I mean, I talk to every kid on a one-on-one basis of what's important. Okay. Did something happen in your family seriously because of are you still there? Because of the coronavirus?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. There might be a legitimate story there, but we know how people are. Like you see these essay prompts that say, tell us about an obstacle that you've overcome. Okay, yeah. I would not write about this. Everybody's overcoming this in the whole world. So that I'm just worried about it becoming the cliche essay. So I'm really already saying like, probably we're not writing about that. Like you're not writing about that.
I think you're spot on though. I think that, so for most of the people who don't know about the additional information essay, it's in the writing section of the Common App. It's a totally optional essay. It has been in the past. Perhaps this year the schools are going to make it mandatory to actually explain what the student's school situation was during the pandemic. I don't imagine that will happen, but you're right. I think that's the perfect place to write about it. I think that's the only place that they should really focus on it. Talk about, what maybe happened unexpectedly, or what the challenges were, or why they hadn't taken the test yet, or why they did take the test early and they were planning on, any sort of hiccup or obstacle or bump in the road that they had because of this, and how they can, sort of anything that will clarify for the readers, for the admissions officers, what their application, why their application looks a certain way, and what the students' challenges were. So I think that's a great idea, but I think, the main essay, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this because, in some cases, the story of my year, if I were a junior right now and we're going to be applying, the story of my year is spending time alone, spending time with myself, and how that makes me feel, like what it means to be someone who's relied on virtual relationships in a lot of ways, like texting and social media, and all of a sudden now it's the only thing I have. And so I can see some really interesting essays coming out of this, but definitely do not write about, the pandemic changed me because, and I think you're spot on. It doesn't need to be the the house building in Central America essay.
All I'm saying is having read a million applications, and I read them at a Catholic Jesuit school. So of course, a lot of the essays were the mission trip essay, like you were just alluding to. And it just gets so cliche. You don't learn anything about that individual person. That's my thing. And so I think, honestly, in this time period, if I'm an admissions officer, I can already tell you a lot of people are going to write about what's going on right now. So imagine an admissions officer now, a couple months down the road, reading applications, and every other essay is about the coronavirus. All you've been hearing about is the coronavirus. You're going to be like, give me something else, please. So
just write about your cat.
Yes, exactly.
Christina.
Yes.
Have to go? Are we done with?
I do actually have to go, but we can do this again, maybe.
We can do this again. Can you hold up your info one more time?
Yeah. Please. So the website has actually all my stuff. So yeah, awesome.
Christina, I'm so grateful for you.
Yeah,
and
me too.
Let's try and do this again, because I think that there are a lot more questions that people have and that you can have great insight on. So I really appreciate all your time and help.
Yeah, I appreciate your time too. Yeah.
And go ahead and let me see if you want to go ahead and log out or hang up.
Okay, I guess. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll talk to you later.
Good talking to you.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Okay, folks. So that's our first series, and I know that more questions that we didn't get to cover today, and a lot more questions that our talk today might raise. So I want to do my best. If you have any other questions and you'd like to send, please reach out to either Christina or myself. And we'll do our best to help you with any decisions that you have to make, with any challenges that you're facing, whatever we can do. Everyone needs to do their part, and this is what we're good at. So we're going to try and do our best. Thank you. Happy Earth Day. So grateful for anyone who's tuning in. And again, feel free to submit or send questions, and we'll answer them next time. All right, and take care. Read.